Ever since 1986, The Legend of Zelda has maintained its reputation as one of the greatest and most influential franchises in gaming. And with so many different worlds and characters between these games, we feel that we couldn't possibly do the series justice by doing just one episode of Good to Evil. Instead, we're going to be covering some of the biggest and best games in the series over time. Starting with the crown jewel of this amazing collection, Ocarina of Time. Released in 1998, Ocarina was a 3D pioneer not only for Zelda, but for the whole action-adventure genre. That still holds up remarkably well for a Nintendo 64 game and is still referred to by some as one of the greatest games ever made. But putting the game's legendary status behind us, we're still left with the hero of time himself and all the characters, be they big or small, important or arbitrary. Who's good and who's evil? Break out your ocarina and unbottle your favorite fairy because we're about to find out. I'm Kyle with 1UP Binge, and this is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Good to Evil. Now, it was a tricky task pinning down the most good person this time around, but we ultimately decided that Saria was the most deserving of the top spot. An unassuming Kokiri girl, Saria was Link's first and only real friend for the longest time, while the other Kokiri frequently alienated him for his lack of a fairy. She's about as cheerful and happy-go-lucky as one can get, to the point that her own song is capable of lifting one's spirit even when in a foul mood. She's shown to be very sentimental, giving Link one of her own fairy ocarinas as a memento to remember her by in one of the game's most somber moments. But what pushes her to the top of the list is that much like the other sages, she investigates the local forest temple when she hears the spirits within calling for help. Mind you, Saria has the biology of a child with no combat experience or weapons to speak of, and yet she showed the same level of bravery as seasoned warriors like Darunia and Impa in a place as foreboding and terrifying as the Forest Temple. Destiny could not have picked a better forest sage. Not far behind Saria is another Kokiri forest denizen, the Great Deku Tree. The guardian of the forest, along with the Kokiri's emerald, the Deku Tree was the first of many victims faced with Ganondorf's wrath when he refused to give up the emerald despite knowing he would be as good as dead once that happened. He's the only one who sends Navi to retrieve Link and sends the two off to Hyrule Castle before withering away and dying from Ganondorf's curse. At the start of the game, he's shown to be a very wise and caring father figure to all the Kokiri along with Link, which makes his death that much harder to watch. Next up is the Triforce of Wisdom's wielder, Princess Zelda. As the Princess of Hyrule, Zelda was one of the very first to determine that Ganondorf was plotting against her father despite only being a child at the time. She sends Link on his way to collect the other spiritual stones and provides some assistance in the form of signed notes to get him past the guards, and secretly handing down the Ocarina of Time to him. Even when Ganondorf succeeds in making it to the Sacred Realm first, she is still able to work against him by disguising herself as the masked warrior Sheik, and teaching Link new warp songs to make his job a little easier. A lot of the personality traits that are consistent between incarnations of Zelda can be found in this one. Kind-hearted, loyal, wise, and willing to jump into a fight if she's needed. Such as when she pins Ganon down with her magic so that Link can deliver the coup de grace. Okay, we're throwing in Rauru and Kaipora Gaibora. Pairing these two up might seem a little weird to those of you unfamiliar with the game's lore. After all, one is the elderly and solemn sage of light, while the other is an intelligent owl. But both in-game hints provided by Sheikah Stones, as well as text from the official Zelda Encyclopedia, Hyrule Historia, indicates that Rauru is the true form of Kaipora, who uses the owl to monitor the world outside the Temple of Light. From a player's perspective, Kaipora's hefty amount of exposition and instructions comes off as a bit overbearing and annoying, but we're sure Link appreciates the extra help and the occasional free ride he can get from him. Rauru isn't able to provide as much, but he does keep Link safe in the Sacred Realm so that he can age up into an adult and seems to act as a leader to the other sages. Now we arrive at the one and only hero of time, Link. In terms of heroics, no one can match Hyrule's champion. Even as a kid, Link willingly walked into all sorts of dangerous places just for the sake of helping other people. He ventured inside the cursed Deku tree, a hazardous cave crawling with dinosaurs, Lord Jabu Jabu's disgusting insides, and the haunted well. His selflessness and kindness allowed him to earn the trust of both the Zoras and the Gorons, enough to be entrusted with their respective sacred stones. And even when faced with a very angry Ganondorf, Link still has the guts to draw his sword in defiance of his demands despite likely being scared out of his wits, something that Ganondorf himself genuinely respects. As an adult, Link still has his heart in the right place, which means everything in a world polluted by Ganon's dark influence. Using his newly pulled Master Sword, he travels to every corner of Hyrule to defeat Ganondorf's minions, awaken new sages, and give the people hope that had been long lost. Possessing both the Triforce of Courage and the spirit of the hero like all the other Links, Ocarina's incarnation is arguably the most picture-perfect version of the character, which does admittedly make him seem a bit bland by comparison. But still, his bravery and determination are worth admiring. That said, he does have a few small flaws that set him back a bit, mainly that he's got the mindset of a child both in the past and the future, seeing as his body physically developed for 7 years while he was in a deep slumber. He can be a bit lazy, a bit naive, and while his bravery is inspiring, it can blow up in his face when he rushes into situations he really isn't able to handle, such as when Bongo Bongo beats the tar out of him for trying to protect Sheik. Nevertheless, Link's good qualities dominate his character and is amongst the very best protagonists in Nintendo's lineup. Link's trusty steed, Epona, is up next. Originally a very skittish and shy mare, Epona is only fond of those who play her song, and this continues for 7 years where she remains a wild and difficult to tame horse for Ingo. Link can use her song to successfully mount her, and her unmatched speed allows him to win her in a horse race. Much like other horse companions across media, Epona is portrayed as free-spirited yet endlessly loyal to her caretaker, as she'll rush to Link's aid whenever he plays her tune, regardless of the distance. You can't mention Epona without bringing up her original caretaker, Milan. The daughter of Talon, she's spent most of her life at Lon Lon Ranch, and is shown to be exceptionally good with animals as a result, especially Epona. As a child, she's almost always happy, constantly smiling, joking, or singing, even when she's being neglected by her slacking father. And in the future, when the bitter Ingo becomes the new owner of the ranch, Milan still works as a farmhand there because she knows he'll hurt the horses if she attempts to leave. A very selfless act considering how miserable she must be doing all the work while being separated from her only family. She's also one of, if not the only, NPC outside the main cast to recognize Link in the future, which goes to show how much she enjoyed his company in the past and how grateful she is now that he's put a stop to Ingo's oppression. Navi deserves a lot more credit than she actually gets. Much like Kaipora Gaibora, Navi is written off as an obnoxious companion who constantly yaps in the player's ear about everything, but she's probably the most useful ally that Link has. As a fairy, Navi is incapable of contributing to the heavy lifting, but she's more than willing to risk her neck by flying up in an enemy's face to help Link focus during combat, and can even provide information on enemy behavior and weak points. Outside of combat, she's always there to help keep Link on track and will follow him anywhere regardless of the danger, be it the belly of a beast or a temple built inside of a volcano. Sure, she starts off a little frustrated and doubtful of Link's abilities, but it didn't take long for her to warm up to him. We finally arrive at another sage, Impa. As the last remaining Sheikah, Impa has devoted her life to protecting the royal family and acts as the responsible bodyguard and nursemaid to Princess Zelda. She does have a few notable feats under her belt, including sealing Bongo Bongo in the bottom of a well. helping Zelda make her getaway on horseback from Ganondorf, and likely teaching Zelda the ways of the Sheikah so she could properly fight and hide. The problem is most of this is either implied or done off screen, so it's hard to put her any higher. That said, we do appreciate that Impa talks to both child Zelda and Link as equals. She isn't patronizing like most other adults in the game, and that's a really nice change of pace. The Goron leader, Darunia, is up next. While he does come off as hot-blooded and rude on the first visit, his bad attitude is understandable when you realize he's trying to solve the Goron race's food crisis issue caused by Ganondorf. After Link steps in, he lightens up a great deal and is arguably the most jovial of the soon-to-be sages. However, he gets his best moment in the Fire Temple, where he takes on the Goron-eating dragon, with nothing but his bare fists, while Link uses the diversion to free the other Gorons. It's as noble as it is awesome. Oh, and he's also a great dancer. What a guy. We'll quickly highlight the various great fairies. While not vital to the plot, each of these mystical mistresses bless Link with upgrades or new magical powers should he be able to find them. This includes an extension to his magic meter and abilities based off the fabled golden goddesses. While some help is better than none at all, you do have to wonder if the fairies could have offered a bit more assistance in such a bad situation. Next on our list is Princess Ruto. Let's just say our first brush with the Princess of Zora's could have been a lot better. She lost the Zora's sapphire inside of Lord Jabu Jabu and went inside to try and reclaim. She did this without informing her father, which gets him worried sick about her sudden disappearance. Once Link finds her inside the Great Fish, Ruto acts incredibly spoiled and entitled, treats Link with no respect, and forces him to carry her around. This turns around once Link completes the dungeon where Ruto goes from rude to love-struck when it dawns on her that he's saved her life. She only gives him the sapphire in exchange for his promise of engagement, something that Link doesn't completely understand. Thankfully, she gets a lot more likable in the future. Like Darunia, she's found venturing into the Water Temple to save both Zora's domain and her frozen subjects from Morpha's influence. And once it's all over, she puts her role as a sage above her marriage engagement with Link, which shows a great deal of patience and discipline on her part. As the last of our sages and overall good characters, we've got Nabooru. At first glance, a Gerudo under Ganondorf's command is probably bad news, but she makes her stance very clear. The Gerudo tradition of the one male being the ruler of the whole group was the only reason Nabooru was serving under Ganondorf, but by the time Link meets her in the Spirit Temple, she's looking for a way to overthrow Ganondorf. Despite being a master thief, Nabooru does have some standards. She is against killing, stealing from women and children, and only wants her people to thrive in their harsh desert home, which is a strong contrast from Ganon, who wants to take over the whole world and will stoop as low as he needs to seize victory. This does cause her to undergo some brainwashing by Kotake and Kuume, and tries to kill Link in the Spirit Temple, but Link is able to snap her out of it, allowing her to awaken as a sage where she assists in Ganon's defeat. Moving on, let's talk about Lon Lon Ranch's original owner, Talon. It's not too hard to find faults with Talon. He's lazy, like really lazy, despite being the owner of the ranch. Talon himself is hardly ever seen working and is constantly napping on the job. This includes taking a snooze in Hyrule Castle while his young daughter is forced to wait alone for him in the middle of the night. Despite supposedly caring very much about Milan, he never makes an effort to better himself for her sake, even after he lost the ranch to Ingo and Milan is forced to stay there. Still, despite his flaws, you could argue that he's at least a decent guy. Mild-mannered, not above cracking a harmless joke, and very forgiving if the ending is anything to go by, where it seems like he actually patched things up with Ingo. Kakariko Graveyard's caretaker, Dampé, is one of the more interesting minor characters in Ocarina of Time. He claims he isn't a bad guy despite his ugly appearance and grouchy posture, and it's mostly true. He's likely just a guy trying to make a living who has to deal with people who likely ostracize and demonize him for how he looks. He's actually very nice to you in the future, where his ghost will lead you through a labyrinth that leads to his favorite possession, the hookshot. However, we can't give him a complete pass because of his little side business in the past. The heart-pounding grave-digging tour he gives at night lets you pay him to dig in certain spots for treasure, which is pretty messed up when you realize he's turning grave robbing into a tourist attraction. Okay, now for Mido. As the self-proclaimed leader of the Kokiri, Mido acts as the aggressor in the otherwise peaceful Kokiri community. He's bossy, egotistical, and believes he deserves more respect than he actually gets. He forces the other Kokiri to do odd jobs around the forest and resents Link for being the favorite of both the Great Deku Tree and specifically Saria, seeing that he has a crush on the latter. And after Link left the forest, Mido tried to make him look bad by spreading rumors that Link was the one to kill the Deku Tree. With that said, he does become far more tolerable in the future, though most of that is because he isn't able to recognize Link. He blocks the path to the Forest Temple in Saria in the Lost Woods, which is crawling with monsters, and only lets Link pass upon hearing him play Saria's song. Undeniable proof that Link knew Saria and was worth trusting. Seems like the next 7 years was a humbling experience for him. It feels a little weird putting King Zora so low on the list, but we've got plenty of things to criticize. Unlike Mido, King Zora is not malicious, but on the other hand, he actually holds a position of absolute authority. This creates problems since King Zora isn't one for taking action, or moving. He says he's concerned for his daughter going missing, but he doesn't bother to send anybody to look for her and just lies around waiting for some miracle to happen. And when you come back to Zora's domain in the future, you find that the big tub of lard hasn't moved an inch in 7 years. The most that we can say about him is that he's not a bad guy, but even if he was, he'd be too inept to cause any harm. Finally, arriving at some decisively bad characters, we have Ingo. Now let's get this out of the way. Ingo was mad because he felt that Talon didn't deserve to own the ranch, and that he should be the owner since he did most of the hard work. And to be fair, he's not completely unjustified for thinking that. At the same time, there would probably be more constructive ways to improve his job besides supporting Ganondorf just so he could become the new owner of the newly named Ingo Ranch. In the future, Ingo's shown to be very condescending and arrogant from his mannerisms down to the way he's dressed. And if banishing Talon and forcing Milan to obey him wasn't enough, he also attempts to lock Link in the ranch when he wins Epona in a race fair and square. At the very least, he seems a bit better by the end of the game, but it's just as likely he's still harboring some animosity towards Talon. Now for the silver medal of evil, we're giving it to the surrogate mothers of Ganondorf, Kotake and Kuume. Raising the King of Evil alone gets these two a pretty high evil spot on our list. But there's a lot more to unpack with these two Gerudo witches. Where Ganon utilizes brute force to keep everybody in line, the two use mind control and manipulation. Upon realizing the Buru's betrayal, they kidnapped and brainwashed her, forcing her to fight as an Iron Knuckle guard. And unlike the other dungeon bosses, who were minions or monsters, these two personally take it upon themselves to kill Link in the Spirit Temple by using their powerful fire and ice magic along with their fusion, Twinrova. Finally, surprising absolutely no one, Ganondorf takes his rightful spot as the most evil character on our list. And really, who's going to argue with this one? While Ocarina was not the first game to have Ganon, it was the first to put a strong emphasis on his character and just how rotten to the core he is. Introduced to us as he feigns his allegiance with the King of Hyrule, Ganondorf is established from the get-go as a power-hungry warlock who wants nothing more than to open the Sacred Realm and claim the all-powerful relic that lies within, the Triforce. In the past, he demands the spiritual stones from their respective guardians, and delivers punishment when they deny him. From killing the Great Deku Tree from the inside to sentencing the entire Goron race to starvation. When Link is placed in a 7-year coma from opening the door to the Sacred Realm, Ganon is able to claim the Triforce of Power unopposed, take the throne, and raise hell for all the denizens of Hyrule. He planned to make an example out of the Gorons for their disobedience by feeding them to Volvagia. He drained Lake Hylia and sent a phantom in his likeness to torment those who entered the Forest Temple. And that's just a few things that he did. What really sells him though was that regardless of the outcome, Link and the Sages were never able to truly finish off Ganondorf in this game. Either Link died in his final battle, Ganon was defeated and sealed away in the Sacred Realm where he would eventually escape, or he was ratted out before he could even obtain the Triforce and was slated for execution, in which he avoided that too. Ganondorf was never truly killed in this game, and this same man would create all sorts of new problems in later games like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. And when your evil in one game is capable of spreading to other games like wildfire, it's safe to say that you're as bad as they come. And that's our ranking. Disagree with us? Let us know in the comments. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters of your favorite games. But most importantly, stay wicked.